Okay, good day class. So today we're going to have our lesson on building characters and settings in creative writing. So last lesson we talked about developing themes and styles, which are essentially the foundations of your story. So now we're going to talk about building characters and settings, which are the other elements you need within your story. So walang story na walang character and setting. So, ito yung mga talagang essentials na kailangan natin i-develop. Next week, we'll talk about conflict and points of view as well as the plot of the story. So, let's go on with our lesson. First, our objectives. Of course, identify the meaning of characters and settings in fiction. Siyempre, kailangan alam natin kung ano yung pinag-uusapan natin. Next naman po, discuss the different types of characters and characterization. There are two types of characterization, but the types of characters, there are several according to different aspects. So we'll take a look at those. Next is demonstrate the ways in which to write settings in a vivid way and create original characters and settings using a pre-made template. I'll be discussing how to use the template and how you'll submit your original characters later on when we get to that point in the lesson. So, let's start. Ayan. So, characters and settings. Unang-una, a character in fiction. Okay? So, characters in fiction, okay, is a person or other being in a narrative. So, hindi po tayo limited sa human species lamang. Like I discussed in one of our past lessons, characters can be anything. It can be a magical creature, a human, an animal, what we call anthropomorphized beings. It can be standard non-living beings na binigyan ng buhay, aliens, everything under the sun that you can think of. That is the beauty of fiction. We can imagine any type of character or any type of being to be alive in our stories, no? So you don't have to limit yourself to humans. So there are types of character in literature. These types of characters are divided into three categories for the context of this lesson. No? First is according to their role. The role they play in the story is crucial because that's how they will act within the story. Ano ba yung kumbaga, sino ba sila within the story? Ano ba yung kanilang yun nga, yung role nila. So, I believe most of these or all of these are incredibly familiar to you already. But let's go on to the first one. Of course, we have our protagonist. Ang protagonist po natin, of course, hindi po siya nawawala kasi siya po ang main character. Okay? Sa mga feeling main character dyan, this is your time to shine. No? So, main character po of the story, siya po yung sinusundan ng narrative. Okay? Take note that the main character is not always, or the protagonist is not always the hero. And morally, as we'll go on to the lesson, you'll get this, morally, they are not always the right person. Okay? Again, later on when we talk about alignment, you'll understand this more. But the protagonist is just the person who the narrative is following closely. Siya po yung main focus ng narrative. They do not necessarily have to be the good guy. Okay? Now, tandaan, when you are writing your protagonist, they should be carefully crafted with a logical backstory, personal motivation, and a character arc over the course of the story. Since the protagonist is the main person that the narrative is following, the readers should have a sort of interest within this or towards this person. Kailangan interesting siya. Hindi siya one-sided, siya ay multidimensional, kailangan meron siyang motivation that the readers can actually relate to. One thing about Filipino fiction that is so good is that because it happens in a local setting, no, it gives us a very relatable motivation for our protagonist. Okay, so for example, and you're going to hear this a lot throughout my lesson. One of my favorite characters in media is Elle Woods from Legally Blonde, from the movie Legally Blonde. No? Um, ang motivation ni Elle Woods is to is to go to Harvard and prove to her ex na hindi siya basta-basta dumb blonde stereotype lang. And what makes her an interesting character is because that motivation in its own right seems so far-fetched, and she is such a likable character. She's not perfect, she's just a likable character that people would be invested in. So that's the importance of having a carefully crafted protagonist. Hindi pwedeng siya yung bida kasi siya yung bida. There needs to be a logical reason why bakit siya yung chosen one, bakit siya yung bida, bakit siya yung kailangan i-follow yung story. Excuse me, this goes without saying, they should also have interesting personalities. Okay? So, of course, kung may protagonist, I'm sure you all know, meron tayong antagonist. The antagonist is the villain of the story. Again, not necessarily an evil person. It just needs to be someone who's the opposite of the protagonist, or in some way their goals align or do not align or conflict with the protagonist. They do not necessarily have to be bad or evil. They do not necessarily have to be mad or angry or have this personal grudge against the protagonist. It's just that they have to have different goals, okay, from the protagonist. So the antagonist, ladies and gentlemen, is quite literally the source of the conflict. They're going to be the source of the conflict for your protagonist. For example, yun na yung mga ano natin, we have standard antagonists like the standard villains of the story, like the stepmother from Cinderella. We have the evil queen from Snow White, and then we have more ambiguous antagonists like yun nga, going back, yung ex ni Elle Woods from Legally Blonde, si Warner Huntington. Hindi naman siya evil. He's not really a bad guy. He's not a purely good guy, but he never wishes ill towards Elle. Hindi niya kahit kailan kinalaban, or he never wanted Elle to be harmed or in any way he never wishes anything bad to happen to Elle. It's just that their goals didn't align with each other. So that's what an antagonist is. Someone whose goals are not aligned with your protagonist, which creates conflict and then drives the story forward. Okay? So next po, we have the Deodaratans or the Confidants. These are sidekick characters, Robins to Batmans. Often protagonist goals flow through the Confidant, although not every story needs one. Ngayon, very popular dito sa Filipino media ang Confidants or Deodaratans because they usually also come as the comic relief. They come out when things are serious, to lighten the mood, to be more of a comic, to be funny, etc. And the confidant in some stories plays a very vital role because they are really there to support the protagonist. Most protagonists need confidence. In many modern media, sometimes the protagonist or the confidant can evolve into something more. They can be a protagonist who has the same levels of importance and focus as the protagonist. Or in some of my favorite stories, for example, the original comics of Captain America, where Bucky in the original comics of Captain America, Bucky was actually his sidekick. But after that, after being captured in failed mission, he becomes the Winter Soldier, which for a time was an antagonist. So, from the protagonist to antagonist, that creates an incredibly interesting power dynamic between the shifting from different roles. So you can also do that in your stories. Okay? The last type of character according to role is the love interest. We all know uh, who the love interest is. It's the protagonist object of desire, and sometimes it's also the antagonist object of desire, and that creates the conflict. The antagonist and the protagonist both want the same person, and therefore it conflicts with both of their goals. Okay, so a good love interest will be compelling and three-dimensional. Hindi po pwedeng, ay, bakit siya yung love interest? Hindi pwedeng ganda lang. Okay, yes, that is one good thing to start, but there should be a reason why they are desired. Not just because of their looks, maybe they're kind, maybe they're philanthropic, maybe they're the best person in the world for the protagonist, but you have to have a deeper reason other than looks. Okay? So that is the love interest. Good examples here, we have Daisy Buchanan from The Great Gatsby and Peeta Mellark from The Hunger Games. Okay, class. So another thing you have to note about the love interest is that it's easy to confuse them with love teams. In love stories or in stories that fall under the genre of romance, most of the time, the two main characters are protagonists because you can have more than one protagonist. No? But if the story has one protagonist, it's not a love story. It just so happens to have a romance in the story. Then one of them is a love interest and the other is the protagonist. So for example, in Romeo and Juliet, it is a romance. Well, it's a comedy of errors, but it's centered around romance. So therefore, Romeo and Juliet are both protagonists. In The Hunger Games, Peeta Mellark is a love interest because the protagonist of The Hunger Games is Katniss Everdeen, not Peeta Mellark. Okay, so that's the difference between a love interest and a protagonist that just so happens to be in love with the other protagonist. Okay, next we have characters according to their development within the story. So there are some types of characters that develop within the story, and we call them round characters. These characters change throughout the course of the story. They can be good to evil, evil to good, from rags to riches. And remember that this shows fluidity. They need to show the capacity for change when we first meet them. They need to go from somewhere. So sometimes these characters, again, let's go back to my favorite character, Albus. In the beginning, she is introduced as a stereotypical blonde, but she's never explicitly described as dumb. Okay, in fact, she is shown to have a great eye for detail and to be quite smart. This is evidenced by a scene where she says she has a 4.0 average. That is a quite high average. That's essentially with highest honors. This dynamic or this introduction to her sets up a precedent wherein we can see her grow within the story, from the stereotypical blonde who doesn't think of anything but shopping and boys and just being pretty, to the successful law student who eventually wins a court case as an intern. So hindi siya na-stuck sa kung sino lang siya at the beginning of the movie. Okay, so that's what that dynamic or round character is. You start to see change or the capacity for change at the beginning. Okay, so if it's someone who's overcoming a fear, or someone who goes from rags to riches, grows physically, remember, physical change is still change, so we can still consider them as a dynamic character. Okay, but of course, these types of change or these types of characters are more interesting if that change is logical and if it is not forced. If we give the characters a chance to actually change and uh, not just to be tossed around by the plot, as they say. The next type of character is the static or flat character. These are characters that do not noticeably change or do not actually change within the story. They often play a tertiary role, or they are often a villain in the story. They are evil in the beginning and they will be evil at the end of the story. Static or flat characters can be interesting in their own right, but remember that if you're writing a longer story, these types of mm, uh, characters in longer types of prose like novels or even our longer forms of short stories, there need to be changes within characters, so it's not really recommended to have static characters for longer types of fiction. But if you're writing, say, a flash fiction or a kid's story, it's easier to have these static characters be justified, no? So static characters or flat characters do not change, no? Kung sila ay masama sa una, masama pa rin sila sa huli. Example nito, the professor in Legally Blonde, si Professor, I forgot his name, McCallahan, if I'm not mistaken, Professor Callahan. Um, hindi he was not a very good guy at the beginning of when he is introduced, and that remains true until the end of the story. He's still pretty much a very big scumbag. So that's again villain of the story, usually flat characters. Next is the stock character. A stock character is an archetypal character with a fixed set of personality traits. These are usually used as non-playing characters in video games, or these are types of characters that have one-sided or one set of personality traits. Then they also help the story along. Okay, so stock characters are not essentially dynamic or flat. They are just modeled after archetypal personality traits. So for example, we have the hero, the lover, the comic relief, the outlaw, the rebel, the wise old man. Dito sa Pilipinas, meron tayo yung masungit na mata pobre, matanda na mag-o-offer ng 10 milyon para layuan yung anak niya. Okay? So, ganun po yung mga stock character. Yung mga nakikita natin paulit-ulit sa mga story that give a little bit more of an interesting twist or an interesting conflict, or they give some sort of contribution to our story. Okay? So, next we have, so this is my favorite part of this lesson to discuss. Types of characters according to their alignment. So, types of characters according to their alignment, we have 9 alignments. But first, let me discuss what alignment is. In the game Dungeons & Dragons, a fantasy role-playing game, which I happen to play and I love to play, it is a categorization of ethical and moral perspective of player characters. Okay? So, alignment is, tandaan nyo, ethical and moral perspective. So this is how good your characters are. And in recent years, these categories have been used by fiction writers to create their characters. Like I said before when I was introducing protagonists and antagonists, some characters are not just good or not just evil. It's never just black and white. So as we see, morality and ethics can be a spectrum. So therefore, this is a more simplified version of this spectrum, mainly because we don't really have time to get into the philosophy of morals. So these 9 alignments will help us be more clear as to how our characters will act. So if they act within a certain alignment, so if they are in a certain alignment, they will act according to that. Can they stray? Yes, because again, dynamic characters can change. Can they be one thing at the from start to finish? Yes, again, because static characters are again a thing in fiction. So the first thing we have to remember is that alignment is not permanent, but it's a good way to start on deciding how your characters will act. So let's have the first 3. So we have the goods. Okay? So we have lawful good, neutral good, and chaotic good. So a lawful good character will act with compassion and will always with a with a sense of honor and duty. These are the types of characters who will follow the law. Okay? What is good and bad is bad. There is no in between. That is why they're called lawful good. Examples here are Superman and Captain America. Early Captain America. Okay? Not before the Iron Man versus Captain America movies or that phase of the MCU. But these types of characters, again, they do good because it's the right thing to do. And if they follow, and that means following the law. So, for example, if they catch you stealing, let's say you stole a piece of bread or you stole some bread from a store, they will arrest you because they're lawful good. It is against the law to steal. Therefore, they will arrest you for stealing. Neutral good characters, on the other hand, are typically altruistic without regard for lawful precepts. So what this means, ladies and gentlemen, is they are good. They want to do good. But sometimes the laws and rules are irrelevant. So for example, you stole a piece of bread because your family is going hungry. You explain this to the neutral good character and they let you go because they understand that although stealing is bad, you need to feed your family. The intentions were good, therefore the action was good. That is how a neutral good character acts. A chaotic good character, on the other hand, is generally disorganized. They want to do the right thing, but they aren't sure of how to do it. And therefore, we create anti-heroes. These are where the anti-heroes come from, the chaotic good characters. These are the types of characters that will kill 3 people to save 1 million people. That's the type of characters, chaotic good characters. Let's say for not just not as dire as that. A chaotic good character can be someone who maliciously complies to the rules of a school or a company just so they can help other people. For example, dun tayo sa example ng nagnakaw. Okay? So, nagnakaw ka ng bread, nakita ka, nahuli ka ni chaotic good character, tinulungan ka pa niya magnakaw ng iba pang pagkain kasi nga kailangan mo ng pera. Okay? O kasi nga kailangan mo pakainin ng pamilya. Okay? Ganun po yung chaotic good character. They want to do the right thing, but they're not always going to do the best thing for others. Sometimes people get hurt in their methods or sometimes people die, but that's just because they want to do the best for the greater good. So next we have the neutrals. The neutrals are in the middle of the spectrum. They are not exactly good or evil. They're just they remember that they don't sway either way. Okay? But hindi rin sila disregarded. Okay? The neutrals are closer to what we are as real people. We're not terribly good, we're not evil either. We're just normal. So we have lawful neutral. Lawful neutral characters believe strongly in lawful concepts such as honor, order, and rules, but often follow a personal code. So, for example, Stormtroopers and Black Widow. Hindi na tayo lalayo. Ang magandang example nito is si Ma'am Jade. Ma'am Jade, ako po, I believe in concepts like honor, order, rules, and traditions because some of these concepts are needed. Some laws are necessary, some rules are necessary. But there are some rules that I personally believe are unnecessary. For example, I do not use for sometimes I don't use the overpass because I feel it to be necessary. Roads by design and by their invention were made for humans. Bakit kailangan ako yung mag-adjust sa sasakyan? So, ganun po. That's a lawful neutral character. They believe and they try to follow honor, rules, and order, but sometimes they do have their personal code that ultimately overrides those rules and traditions. Next, the true neutral character is neutral on both axes. They are neither good nor evil, and sometimes they actively seek their own balance. So Catwoman is an example here. Yung mga true neutral, wala talaga silang kinikilingan. Wala talaga silang kinakampihan. And an example of these are the oracles in Greek mythology. Kung hindi nyo po alam, oracles in Greek mythology, they are women given the gift of prophecy by the god Apollo. So marunong po silang mag-tell ng future. And if you give them the right offering or if you ask them the right questions, they will answer you with your future. No. Ang ano po dito, ang kagandahan po dito is wala silang kinakampihan. So pwedeng pumunta kunwari, nagdidigmaan si King A at si King B. Si King A, pwedeng pumunta sa kanya at magbibigay ng prophecy. Si King B, pupunta sa kanya, magbibigay rin ng prophecy. Wala po siyang i-deny. So, that's a true neutral type of character. Wala talaga siyang pinakampihan. Next is a chaotic neutral character. A chaotic neutral character promotes the ideals of freedom. It is their own freedom that comes first. Good and evil come second to their need to be free. So, hindi po sila, pipili sila or kung parang gagawin nila kung ano yung gusto nilang gawin. Basta free sila dun sa choice nila. Hindi dahil, how do you say? Hindi dahil good or evil yung motivations nila, kundi dahil yun ay maganda para sa nila. They're quite selfish in this way. Chaotic neutral characters are quite selfish. They will side with any person or any side that they think will give them the most freedom or the most control over the situation. Ayan. Now we have the last three, which are the evils. The lawful evil is evil but sees a well-ordered system as easier to exploit. They are evil because they believe in something evil. Tandaan nyo, people who are bad are usually don't believe that they are. Those are the types of characters that are lawful evil. Hindi naman sila naniniwala na mali yung ginagawa nila. Actually, they think that this is for the greater good. For example nga, si Thanos. Kaya niya lang naman gustong gawin yung snap at burahin ang kalahati ng populasyon sa universe. Kasi nga, nakikita niya na masyado ng konti ang resources ng universe. So, kailangan kumonti ang mga gagamit ng resources na yun. So, that is an example of lawful evil. They are following something that they do not believe to be evil. They have a system. Okay? Next naman po, the neutral evil. These are the types of characters that will go from one side to another and turn on allies at the moment. Usually when they see this as more beneficial to them. Okay? So, ito yung mga types of traitor kind of characters. Yung mga babaligtarin yung mga kaibigan nila just to further their own goals. So, that's neutral evil. Sa chaotic evil naman, these are the types of evil that are just evil. Okay? They have no respect for rules, other people's lives, other people's belongings. They just want to do their own thing. They are selfish, cruel, have nothing on their mind but their own desires. The Joker and Voldemort are examples. The Joker just wants to be evil because, not Joaquin Phoenix Joker, like the old classic Batman Joker. He's just evil to be. He just wants to spread chaos. Okay, these types of chaotic evil characters are usually described as psychopathic or sociopathic because they have no regard for other people's lives. They just want chaos. Kaya nga po siya chaotic. So, yun po ang alignments. So, those are the 9 alignments that we can use to describe our characters' morality or ethics. So, within media, these have been used. Ayan, so makikita natin. So, nagamit po siya to classify our characters from SpongeBob. Next naman po, ayan, Atla, Avatar The Last Airbender, ang aking isa sa mga paboritong pieces of media. Ayan, si Zuko. True neutral naman kasi talaga si Zuko for the most part. But this is based on like the early seasons yung mga last few seasons more on tawag doon, more on naging neutral good din naman si lawful neutral din naman si Zuko. Ayan. So, etong dalawang to chaotic good talaga. Ayan. So, we have here so, ayan. Si Azula chaotic evil talaga. Wala tayong magagawa. So, pwede rin po siyang i-apply sa kung paano nyo inumin ang soju nyo. Ako personally, ang favorite ko is yung lawful evil. Pero dahil bata pa kayo, dito lang tayo sa lawful neutral. Someday gusto ko ma-experience to neutral evil. By the way, ang sagot po sa ating bonus question sa exam ay Adi. Ang pangalan po ng pusa ko ay Adi. A-D-D-I Adi. Anyway, back to our character alignment. So, ayan po. So, you can really use this character alignment chart to help you understand how your character will act and what are their moral values. You can do more research on this. There are plenty of videos online, TikTok, or Facebook that I see that you can really see examples of how these characters will act. So, characterization. So, meron lang po tayong direct and indirect. So, hindi papahapyawan lang natin ito. Essentially, this is your choice on how you're going to describe your character or how your character will be presented. So, you can present them directly, meaning that the narrator explicitly says what these characters' traits are, or implicitly or indirectly wherein you reveal your character's personality to their actions. This is the indirect characterization is much more interesting for readers because again, you give them a chance to get to know the character. Remember, your character should be viewed as a person, as someone your reader can get to know and judge whether or not they like them or not. Okay? So that's characterization. So, tips for writing characters. First, establish your character's motivations and goals. Kailangan alam natin kung bakit bumabangon sa umaga yung characters. Hindi pwede, character siya kasi character siya. Okay? Hindi, gusto niyang, hindi, gagawin niya i-save niya yung world kasi trip niya lang. Hindi pwede yan. Okay? They need to have motivations and goals. Next, do a slow reveal. Don't lay out all of your character traits all at once. It's better to give your audience a chance to get to know them and then give them little hints or give them chances to reveal little things. Siyempre kayo, kapag nagpapakilala kayo, hindi naman kayo uupo lang sa harap ng katabi niyo at magpapakilala. Buong buhay niyo, ikukwento niyo, diba? So you have to slowly introduce this character to your reader. Next is create conflict. A good character is motivated by good conflict. Okay? So, whether this conflict comes from an antagonist or another person or society or other external forces, that conflict will make your character's actions more interesting. Next, we have give importance to characters' backstory. Give important characters a backstory. So, syempre, si antagonist, si protagonist, kailangan ma-explain bakit sila ganun. Why do they act the way they act and why are they a certain way? Paano sila nakarating sa point na yun sa life? Next, describe a character's personality in familiar terms. Huwag po tayo magagamit ng masyadong maraming or masyadong fancy na terms. Gamit lang po tayo ng plain vocabulary and adjectives to describe our character. Next, paint a physical picture of your characters. It's good to describe their physical aspects as well. Mahirap rin kasi mag-imagine. Wag lang masyadong detailed. Because I know some readers that would like to step into the shoes of their character and they would like to actually imagine themselves as that character. So you can give them a physical description and then the reader will imagine it from there. Yeah. Next is develop secondary characters. Hindi po porket deuteroganist lang or sidekick lang, hindi na natin i-develop. Once again, it is a good way to create interest in your story if you suddenly have evolution between characters. And of course, do not write perfect characters. perfect people don't exist, and perfect characters shouldn't exist as well. Dito nga sa Pilipinas, di ba, pag masyadong perfect, masyado natin ginajudge as being bida-bida or something. Um, the reason we don't like perfect characters is because we can't relate to them. And the purpose of a character is that we can follow someone throughout the story. If we write a character that is too perfect, we can't relate to that character. We can't follow along his journey, his struggle of becoming what he needs to be at the end of the story. Balik tayo kay Elle Woods. The reason why I love Elle Woods so much is because, one, she is flawed. She is kind. In the movie, she is kind and helpful to some, but judgmental towards others. She tries to be a perfect model of femininity, but then realizes that she is not, and that gives her she realizes she is not, and that she does not need to be the perfect model of femininity to be perfect. She tries to change herself fundamentally in a way na, ay, kailangan pala maging different ako para mahalin ako uli ni Warner. But in reality, she just needed to be herself. Those are the flaws. Those are the mistakes. She makes mistakes, and she blunders and she stumbles throughout the movie, but it's in a way where she learns and she grows. And by the end of the movie, she realizes that she just needed to be herself and know the things she needed to know to win. She didn't need Warner's love. She just needed to be herself. So don't write perfect characters. We need characters with the capacity to grow. And if you write perfect characters, there's no growth. Because where do you go? Okay? So please make sure that you don't write perfect characters. Okay? So that's our lesson on characters. Let's go on to settings. Yeah. The setting of a story is the backdrop of a story, or the atmosphere of the scene. It provides context for your main character's actions. So this is the where and when of a story. And the setting affects how your story is going to be received, or how the atmosphere of your story will end up. Okay? So, how do we create a vivid setting for our stories? First, use place to your advantage. Place denotes both geographical location and immediate surroundings. So, a scene that takes place in a cramped room shifts when it occurs in a vast forest. So, using place to your advantage essentially means you create a place or create a setting that will really add to the atmosphere and emotions of your scene. So, for example, if the scene is a funeral, describe a somber and sad location. Okay? It's not, syempre, hindi ka naman magpalalagay ng funeral tapos may o tapos sa Jollibee Kids Party nangyayari. So, you have to make sure to use place to your advantage. Next, make use of time. Time can be expressed as time of day, or season of the year, or historical period. Seasonal change, the advent of winter, or the blistering summer might provide life or death stakes. For example, ngayon, sobrang init. That can add a lot of tension or a lot of difficulty to a fictional character's struggle, no? Nag-aaral ka na nga, sobrang init pa. Historical periods also define behaviors. Okay? So if you're looking for a type of behavior that was commonly used in certain periods of time, you can set your characters, or you can set your story within that character. All of these can help the operation of your characters within your fictional world. So kung kayo po ay gumagamit ng, if you use time, or if you make use of time to your advantage, of course, certain people from certain years or generations act a certain way, we act a certain way at different times of the day or different seasons in our life. So if you use time, or to make use of time in your setting, and have it affect characters on how they act and how they perceive the world, that's a very good thing to really give emphasis to your story. Next, show the world through your character's eyes. uh, it's really good to have your story in the perspective of your characters. So if you're in a especially if you're in a first person point of view, try to reveal the world as your character interacts with it. Syempre, kung hindi niya pa napupuntahan yung isang room, huwag niyo muna i-describe yung room na yun. Have it be revealed as your character enters it. That way, they get a sense of what is it like to live in your character's shoes, to be who your character is. And that gives them a bit more of an investment to what your character will do and how they will act within the world you have created. Okay? Next naman po, be aware of how setting can affect emotions. Ito yung sinasabi ko. Di ba yung mga movie nyo, or yung mga sinusulat nyo script, sabi ko sa inyo, kung horror yan, don't have it set place in the middle of the afternoon. Kasi it won't be as effective as a dark and creepy hallway. Otherwise, they and the world they will come across as static and lacking nuance. Magkaroon kayo ng konting awareness sa kung paano makaka-apekto ang surroundings ng isang tao sa emotions. For example, if you go to a certain place na may maaalala kayong masaya, so that can be a happy place. Syempre, you tend to be happy around places where happy emotions are triggered. So, pwede nyo gawin yun for your characters as well. Okay? So, be aware of how those changes can affect your characters. Tanong. Ayan. Uulitin ko po ang sagot po sa bonus question for our exam is Adi. Ang pangalan po ng pusa ko ay Adi. A-T-T-I-E. Adi. Ayan. So, ayan. Medyo kamukha niya po itong pusang ito. Ayan. So, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me through my email or through our Google Classroom. So, for our activity, ito po. So, by groups of 5 to 7, again, minimum of 5, maximum of 7. Kapag may nag-10 dyan, manghahampas po. Ayan. So, we use the template posted in the Google Classroom to create 5 characters and 3 settings. Each character should have their own template. Ganun din po sa settings. So, bale, kayo po ay gagawa ng 5 characters. So, 5 templates po yung dapat po makita. Since gagawa kayo ng 3 settings, 3 templates din po yung gagamitin. So, bibigyan ko ng example kung ano magiging itsura nun. So, ito po yung ating character creation plate. Ayan. Mukha lang po siyang marami at complicated. Pero pag na-fill out nyo yan, ganito po yung itsura. So, pwede po kayo mag-drawing ng sarili yung character or you can paste pictures that you found on the internet. Ayan po. Ayan. So, ito po. Ayan. So, dito sa mga spectrum kasi to. So, pwede nyo siyang i-fill out. So, gaano siya ka-intelligent? So, ito, medyo mababa lang yung intelligence niya. So, isa lang yung naka-shade. Pero dito, titignan nyo, medyo mataas yung intelligence niya. So, 3 yung naka-shade. So, ganun lang po siya. Spectrum po kasi yan. So, kayo po ang bahala kung paano nyo siya i-fill out. Basta sa kada group, dapat merong 3 ganito. May 5 character at 3 setting. Sa setting naman po, ganito po yung makikita ninyo. Ayan. And then, ganito po yung pwede nyong gawin. So, dito, gumawa lang po siya ng collage ng mga setting niya for their story. Ayan. So, ito po yung iba't ibang lugar kung saan mangyayari yung story. So, 3 collage po yung gagawin niyo. Ito kasi medyo condensed na siya. 3 magkakaibang setting na to. Kinondense niya lang sa iisang collage. Pero yung gagawin nyo is different. So, ganito, ayan, pwede nyo pong gawin. And medyo mas organized to. Ito naman, by scene, ginawa nila. Or, if you want to be more fancy, or you want to be more, want to have a wider or broader coverage for your setting, ayan, pwede kayong gumawa ng sarili yung map. Ayan. So, this is an example of that. You can create your own world with your own map na kung saan titira. Tandaan, kailangan po yung character nyo ay connected dun sa setting na gagawin nyo, ha? So, kailangan may connection po sila sa isa't isa. So, ayan po ang example. So, yan po yung activity ninyo. Kailangan po magawa nyo yan. Ipapasa nyo po yan sa Google Classroom. Okay? So, ayan po. Again, if you have any questions, you can contact me through my email, through Messenger, or through our Google Classroom comments. Now, again, uulitin ko po, ang pangalan po ng pusa ko ay Addie, A-D-D-I-E. Yan po ang sagot sa ating bonus question sa exam. So, if that's, kung yun lang po lahat, thank you for watching our video. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you when I see you. Goodbye, class.